How can my own sister do this to me? It's unbelievable. The rain hammered against the cafe window as Elena started the envelope in her trembling hands. 3 years of marriage, 7 years of friendship before that, and it had all come down to this moment. A manila envelope containing photographs that would shatter everything she thought she knew about love. The downtown Bean had always been their place. She and Marcus had discovered it during their sophomore year of college, when they were both broke and studying for midterms, surviving on day-old pastries and bottomless cups of coffee that cost more than they could afford, but less than anywhere else in the city. The owner, Mrs. Chen, still remembered their orders: Elena's vanilla latte with an extra shot, Marcus's black coffee with 2 sugars. Some things, Elena had believed, never changed. But the envelope in her hands proved that belief to be as fragile as the autumn leaves pressed against the rain-soaked glass. Marcus sat across from her, his weathered face etched with concern. At 32, he looked older than his years, lines carved around his eyes from too many late nights as a photojournalist, too many years of witnessing the world's harsh truths through his camera lens. Her childhood friend, her confidant, the one person who had never lied to her. Until today, she had thought David held that distinction too. "I'm sorry, Elle," Marcus said quietly, his voice barely audible over the storm outside. His hands were steady on the table, those same hands that had held hers when her father died, that had helped her move into her first apartment, years ago, at that trendy rooftop bar Rebecca loved, the one with overpriced cocktails and a view of the city skyline. Rebecca had introduced them, actually. "Elena, this is David. He's in finance like you wanted to be." And Elena had felt that immediate spark, that rare connection that made conversation flow like wine and hours pass like minutes. Now she wondered if it had all been planned. "How long?" she whispered, her fingers tracing the edge of the envelope. She didn't want to know, but she had to. It was like pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurt. Marcus hesitated. In their 20-year friendship, she had never seen him struggle for words. He was the one who always knew what to say, who could find humor in the darkest moments, who had talked her through every crisis since they were 12 years old and she'd gotten her first broken heart from Tommy Martinez in 7th grade. "I need air," she said, standing so quickly that her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. The sound was harsh and final, like chalk on a blackboard, or a door slamming shut. "Elena, wait!" But she was already pushing through the cafe door into the storm, the envelope clutched against her chest like armor that wouldn't protect her from anything that mattered. The rain soaked through Elena's coat within seconds, but she didn't care. She needed to feel something other than the hollow ache spreading through her chest like ink in water. The October wind whipped her dark hair across her face as she walked without direction through the familiar streets of downtown Portland. Everything looked different now, as if the revelation had shifted the very foundations of her world. The bookstore where she and David had spent lazy Saturday afternoons browsing travel guides and planning trips they'd never taken. The Italian restaurant where they'd had their first date, where he'd been so nervous he'd knocked over his wine glass, and acquisitions or preparing for next week's exhibition. Work had always been her sanctuary, the place where she could create order from chaos, where beauty and meaning could coexist in carefully curated collections. But even that felt contaminated now. David had been so supportive of her career change, so understanding when she left her lucrative position at the accounting firm to pursue her master's degree in art history. He'd encouraged her, celebrated her small victories, attended every gallery opening with genuine enthusiasm. She thought it was love. Now she wondered if it was guilt. The phone rang, cutting through her spiraling thoughts. David's name flashed on the screen, accompanied by the photo she'd taken of him last summer at the coast, grinning and windblown with the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly behind him. Her thumb hovered over the answer button. "I know,"
The words came out flat and strange, as if spoken by someone else. "You know what? Elena, you're scaring me. Are you okay?" She almost laughed. Was she okay? It was such an absurd question that for a moment she couldn't process how to answer it. Was anyone okay after discovering their marriage was built on a foundation of deception? Was anyone okay after learning that the two people they trusted most in the world had conspired to betray them? "I know about Rebecca." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. In the background, she could hear the familiar sounds of their home. Their home, she corrected herself, though it already felt like a place that belonged to strangers. The old radiator in the living room that always clicked when the heat came on, the grandfather clock in the hallway that David had inherited from his grandmother, the one that chimed every quarter hour and had driven her crazy until she'd grown to love its steady rhythm. Elena. Private jokes they'd developed, conversations that stopped when Elena entered a room. "How long?" she asked again, the same question she'd posed to Marcus, but this time she demanded an answer. Another silence. Then, 6 months. The same timeline Marcus had given her, but Elena's instincts told her it was longer, much longer. Before the wedding? Elena. Before the wedding, David. A sigh that sounded like surrender. Yes. The word hit her like a physical blow, doubling her over as if she'd been punched in the stomach. 2 years! The number reverberated through her skull like a bell tolling. 2 years meant it had started during their engagement. It meant that when he'd proposed to her on bended knee in Powell's books, surrounded by stacks of poetry and first editions, he'd already been with Rebecca. It meant their entire relationship was a sham. "Elena, please!" She hung up and turned off her phone. The house looked the same as it always had when Elena finally returned home near midnight. The craftsman bungalow she and David had bought together 2 years ago, with its green shutters and the rose garden she'd planted by hand, bulb by bulb, dreaming of the children who would play among the flowers someday. The porch light was on, casting a warm yellow glow that had always seemed welcoming before, but now felt like a trap. David's BMW was in the driveway next to her Honda, and she could see him pacing back and forth in front of the living room window, his phone pressed to his ear. Probably calling Rebecca, she realized, probably warning her that their secret was out. Elena! Thank God! I was going crazy. I thought... He reached for her, but she stepped back, and his hands fell to his sides. "Come in, you're soaked." The living room looked exactly as she'd left it that morning, her coffee cup still on the side table next to the couch, the book she'd been reading face down on the armchair. The throw pillow David always complained about positioned just so on the sectional. It was a room that spoke of partnership, of shared decisions and compromised aesthetics, of a life built together one small choice at a time. "I made tea," David said, gesturing toward the kitchen. "That chamomile blend you like." Elena almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Her husband of 3 years had been cheating on her with her sister for 2 years, and he was offering her tea, as if infidelity were something that could be soothed with warm beverages and good intentions. "I don't want tea." "Elena, then make it simple. Use small words." He sat down heavily on the couch, the same spot where they'd watched movies every Friday night, where they'd planned their future and made love on lazy Sunday mornings and argued about whose turn it was to do the dishes. The domesticity of it made Elena feel sick. "I love you," he said. "I've always loved you." "But you love her more." "No." He looked up at her with those green eyes that had charmed her from the first moment they'd met. "It's different with Rebecca. It's complicated." "Complicated how?" David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that had always made him look boyish and vulnerable. Now it just looked calculated, as if he were trying to elicit sympathy he didn't deserve. "She came to me," he said finally. And you were weak. Yes. His voice was barely above a whisper. I was weak. Elena wanted to feel something. Anger, hurt, betrayal, anything. But instead there was just a vast emptiness where her emotions should be, as if her heart had been scooped out with a melon baller and replaced with cotton batting. Did you ever love me? She asked. Or was I just convenient? Elena, how can you ask that? Of course I loved you. I still love you. But not enough to be faithful? It wasn't about love. It was about... He stopped, seemingly realizing that any explanation would only...
Elena stared at him, processing the implications of what he just said. So Rebecca was blackmailing you? Not blackmailing exactly, but she said she couldn't live without me, that she'd rather see your whole family destroyed than give me up. I was trapped, Elena. I didn't know what to do. The picture was becoming clearer now, and somehow it was worse than simple infidelity. This wasn't just about desire or weakness or momentary lapses in judgment. This was about manipulation and coercion and a web of lies that had entangled all of them. Why didn't you just tell me? Elena asked. From the beginning, why didn't you just tell me what happened? Because I was afraid I'd lose you. His voice broke on the words. You were the best thing in my life, Elena. You still are. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you over one stupid mistake.
Rebecca, I'll go to counseling. I want you to leave. The words surprised her almost as much as they surprised him. She hadn't planned to say them, hadn't consciously made the decision, but once they were out there, she realized they felt right. They felt like the first honest thing anyone had said in this house in months. Elena, please. I want you to pack a bag and leave tonight. I need space to think, and I can't do that with you here. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. The indifference in her voice was genuine and complete. Go to your brother's. Get a hotel room. Go to Rebecca's for all I care. I'm not going to Rebecca's. It doesn't matter to me anymore where you go, David. It doesn't matter because I don't care. And as she said the words, Elena realized they were true. The devastated...
At 6 a.m., she gave up on the pretense of rest and made coffee. The kitchen felt enormous without David's morning presence, without the comfortable chaos of two people navigating the same small space, bumping hips at the sink and trading sections of the newspaper. Elena sat at the kitchen island with her laptop, methodically researching divorce lawyers while the sun rose pink and watery through the storm clouds. Her phone had been buzzing all night with calls and texts she hadn't answered. David, Rebecca, even her mother, though Elena couldn't imagine how news of the affair had reached her so quickly. Small families, she reflected, had their own velocity of gossip. By 8 a.m., she'd made appointments with 3 different attorneys for the following week. By 9 a.m., the irony wasn't lost on Elena that Rebecca's success had always made her proud rather than jealous. She'd bragged about her sister to friends and colleagues, shown off Rebecca's Instagram posts of exotic vacations and designer handbags, basked in reflected glory that now felt like fool's gold. The doorman recognized Elena and waved her through to the elevators without calling upstairs. Another small intimacy that would have to be abandoned. Now she felt like a trespasser. Rebecca answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her blonde hair piled in a messy bun that looked effortless, but probably took 20 minutes to achieve. She was beautiful in the way that Elena had always envied, naturally elegant, genetically blessed with high cheekbones and the kind of metabolism that allowed her to eat pizza without consequence. They looked enough alike that people always knew they were sisters, but Rebecca had gotten the better version of their shared DNA. Elena. Rebecca's voice was small and guilty, confirming that David had warned her about Elena's discovery. I was hoping you'd come. Were you? Rebecca stepped aside to let her in, and Elena found herself in the familiar living space, with its carefully curated mix of vintage and...
When? Elena's voice was sharp. When exactly did you want to tell me? Before the engagement party? Before the bridal shower you helped plan? Before you stood up as my maid of honor and watched me marry him? Rebecca flinched, as if she'd been struck. It's complicated. That's what David said. That seems to be everyone's favorite word lately. It is complicated. Rebecca's voice rose, and Elena caught a glimpse of something harder beneath the remorse. Defensiveness, maybe even defiance. You don't understand what it's been like for me, watching you with him, knowing that he what? That he loved me first. The words hung in the air between them like smoke from a fire, toxic and inescapable.
He loved me first, Rebecca repeated. That night we met at my birthday party, he was supposed to be my date. I'd been seeing him for 3 weeks before I introduced you to you. Elena sat down heavily in the nearest chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. That's not possible. Isn't it? Think about it, Elena. Why do you think I was so eager to introduce you to? I thought maybe if he met you, he'd realize what he was missing with me. But it backfired. He took one look at you and forgot I existed. The room seemed to tilt around Elena as memories reshuffled themselves into new patterns. Rebecca's birthday party, 4 years ago. Elena remembered arriving late because of a work crisis, remembered Rebecca introducing her to David with what Elena had interpreted as sisterly pride, but now recognized as something more complex. David's immediate attention.
It wasn't supposed to happen. Rebecca's voice broke, and the tears came now, streaming down her face with what looked like genuine anguish. After your engagement party, I got drunk and went to his hotel room. I just wanted to tell him that I still loved him, that I couldn't watch him marry you. But one thing led to another, and you've been fucking him ever since. Don't say it like that. How should I say it? How should I describe my sister seducing my fiancé and carrying on an affair through my wedding and my marriage? What words would make that sound better? Rebecca was sobbing now, her carefully maintained composure dissolving into raw emotion. I love him, Elena. I've always loved him. Do you have any idea what it's been like watching you have the life that should have been mine? The life that should have been yours? Elena's voice.
What? Get out of my life. Both of you. I never want to see you again. Elena, you don't mean that. We're sisters. We were sisters. Now we're nothing. Elena stood and walked toward the door, her decision crystallizing with each step. She'd spent her whole life being the responsible one, the peacemaker, the sister who cleaned up Rebecca's messes and smoothed over her dramas. But there was no cleaning up this mess, no smoothing over this drama. Some betrayals were too deep for forgiveness. Elena, wait! Rebecca called after her. Don't throw away our whole family over this. Think about Mom. Think about what this will do to her. Elena paused at the door but didn't turn around. You should have thought about that before you decided to fuck my husband. The words felt foreign in her mouth, but they also felt powerful. For the first time in 24 hours, Elena felt like she had some control over her own story.
Protect her financial future. Mrs. Morrison will see you now. Elena followed the receptionist down a hallway lined with abstract art and law degrees, past conference rooms with mahogany tables and leather chairs that spoke of power and money. Sarah Morrison's corner office was impressive without being ostentatious, decorated in muted tones with a few personal touches. Family photos, a small sculpture that looked handmade, books on family law mixed with contemporary fiction. Sarah Morrison herself was younger than Elena had expected, probably early 40s, with silver-streaked auburn hair and intelligent brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a navy blue suit that managed to look both professional and approachable,
and her handshake was for divorce in the legal sense, but she still felt compelled to explain the circumstances. He's been having an affair with my sister for 2 years. Sarah's expression didn't change, but Elena caught a slight tightening around her eyes that suggested she'd heard similar stories before. I'm sorry. That must be very painful. It is. Can you prove the affair? Do you have photographs, communications, anything that documents the relationship? Elena thought of the envelope Marcus had given her, still sitting unopened on her kitchen counter. She'd brought it with her, but hadn't worked up the courage to look at the contents. I have photographs. A friend who's a photographer documented it.
Where did the down payment come from? Joint savings, mostly from David's income. I was in graduate school when we bought it, so I wasn't contributing much financially. But you contributed to the household in other ways, maintaining the home, supporting his career. Yes, I handled all the domestic responsibilities, hosted his work functions, traveled with him to conferences. Elena paused. I gave up a job offer in Chicago to stay in Portland for his career. Sarah made notes. That's important. Oregon recognizes both financial and non-financial contributions to a marriage. What about other assets? Investment accounts, retirement funds, valuable personal property? David has a 401k worth about $200,000, and we have a joint.
What does she want? Justice felt impossible. There was no legal remedy for betrayal, no court order that could restore her faith in love or family. But there were practical considerations. I want to keep the house if possible. I know that might not be realistic given the finances, but it's the only stability I have left. Elena's voice wavered slightly. I want him to buy out my share of his retirement account, and I want to make sure he's responsible for his own debts. Those are reasonable goals. The house might be challenging depending on your income and ability to qualify for a mortgage on your own, but we can explore options. What do you make annually at the gallery? $45,000. Sarah was quiet for a moment, and Elena could see her doing mental calculations. A $45,000 salary wouldn't support a $385,000 house, even if David bought out his share of the equity.